Hey guys, welcome back to Art Class with Miss Stalvey. It's day 375 of quarantine, it feels like. But be that as it may, we have another fun art project this week. This week we are all going to create a drawing using the grid method. Now most of you guys are probably familiar with the grid method. We use it pretty often in all of the classes, but it's one of those tricky, precise techniques that you may need a refresher on to say, oh, how do you do this again? Basically, the idea behind the grid method is we are superimposing a grid over our reference photo and then blowing that grid up, creating an equivalent larger grid for our artwork. And by doing so, we can go square by square, copying what we see in each one of those little boxes and end up with a super accurate reproduction. The grid method has been around for literally forever. Like the ancient Egyptians used it to copy hieroglyphics from scrolls onto the sides of buildings and stuff. It was later picked back up by Leonardo da Vinci in the Renaissance. And then a contemporary artist who uses the grid method is Chuck Close. He creates these giant, larger-than-life, photorealistic portraits that you can hardly believe aren't photographs because they're so accurate, they're so realistic. And the way that he does it, he uses the grid method. So I'm going to walk you guys through the process. I'm going to show you step by step what you've got to do. This is kind of mathy, right? I know that we're artists, but we got to use a little bit of math in this one. And making sure that you follow the steps correctly and that you don't skip anything is going to ensure that we get the outcome that we want. So all you need is a ruler, pencil, piece of paper, and a photograph that you want to use for this drawing. All right, let's rock and roll. Okay, so I have gathered my reference photo, a ruler, and a pencil. Got a cute picture of my baby here. And I am going to first create a grid on this reference photo. The unit of measurement that you choose to use is really up to you. What matters most is that the grid that you use on your reference photo and the grid that you use on your artwork is equivalent. So like I might do 8 by 10 centimeters on my photo, and then I would have to do 8 by 10 inches on my artwork. In this case, I'm choosing to do 1/2 inches, so I'm lining up my ruler, making sure that it's flush on the side there, and I'm making a little mark at every 1/2 inch point along the side of my photograph. So now you can see that I've measured it out. Each of those little tick marks represents a 1/2 inch. Now I'm going to go ahead and repeat this process on all 4 sides. It is so important that you don't skip anything. Do not skip. Do not try to go across now that you have 2 sides. You're going to mess it up. You're not going to make it equal and even because it's really hard to eyeball this. So it's so important that you do all 4 sides. Then what you're going to do is you're going to line up your ruler between the 2 tick marks that you've created really carefully. Make sure they're flush, and you're going to pull your pen or pencil across to get a straight line. I'm going to continue this process with all my little tick marks until I have a full grid. I know that these are all perfect squares, and I'm going to label them 1, 2, 3, A, B, C on either side. Now I want to make my larger equivalent grid, and if you remember, my small one was every 1/2 inch. This one I'm going to make a mark every inch. So I'll have the same number of boxes in my grid, which was 8 across and 12 down, but my artwork, each box will be twice as large, so ultimately the artwork will be twice as big as the reference photo. But it's important to label this so that I don't get lost when I'm going box by box and creating my drawing. So now that I have my equivalent grid, I can start going square by square, looking at each box in my reference photo and drawing what I see in the equivalent box on my artwork. I see that there's a tiny little corner of his head in 2A. If you see, I'm going to draw exactly what I see in that square. I'm just drawing what I see in each box, 1 box at a time, taking it in little bite-sized pieces. This makes the whole a lot more manageable, and it also is a really good check for my own eye. Like, I'm trusting the grid more even than I'm trusting my own eye. If you'll see, I'm periodically double checking to make sure that I am drawing in the correct grid, that I'm drawing what I see in, let's say, D4 in the D4 square on my artwork as well. I'm thinking about how close features are to the edge or the bottom of a square. I'm looking at negative space. I'm also considering where each feature starts and ends and making myself little parameters. For instance, I might say the eye starts about halfway through E4 and it ends almost touching E3. And again, the whole idea here is just to get a drawing that is more accurate than it would be if I was purely basing this on my own site. Once again, you guys are free to use any kind of art medium you have available to you for this project, whether it's a pen, pencil, digital artwork. But I do have paint available, so I'm going to go ahead and paint my picture here. I'm continuing to look really closely at my reference photo and paint what I see. Now, even if you're doing this project, if you're completing it with graphite, pencil, or pen, you can still try to achieve a full range of values by shading things in, adding texture, adding light and dark contrast, adding detail, things like that. So no matter what medium you're using, what's really important is that you have that reference photo out and available the entire time that you're making your artwork, and that you're studying it really closely, referring back to it, and looking at it to try to copy all of those little details and subtle changes and reinterpret those on the page in front of you.